Joining us on POTUS is Dr. William Rosenberg, professor of political science at Drexel University, the co-author of News Verdicts, The Debates and Presidential Campaigns, among other things. He is tweeting at Dr. B. Rosenberg. Bill, welcome. Thanks for being here today.
Good morning.
So we've got the summit is on again. Is this a win for President Trump? Is it a win for Kim Jong-un? What's your takeaway on this?
Well, I think this is actually a win for both of them. Both of them desperately need this to come off. That's why we saw the on again, off again, on again, and perhaps maybe even another off again coming up. Trump needs to really legitimize himself as a world leader that's involved in significant foreign policy issues. And part of the reason why he wants to do that, everyone knows he's the president of the United States, but it's another example of why he can't possibly sit down with Robert Mueller because he's just too busy with world events. On the other hand, we have Kim Jong-un, who really wants this meeting. And if we think back historically, other presidents have been unwilling to meet in bilateral talks, not even just with the president, but in general, because they didn't want to legitimize his regime. So this meeting essentially elevates Kim. One of the other things that's happening is we just heard reports now that Assad from Syria is going to be meeting with Kim as well. So Kim is making his presence known on the world stage, and even if the event does not come off, both sides are going to basically be able to get a win out of this in the sense that they've both elevated their status.
You know, Bill, I was looking back, and it's been you've been on and off the show for a long time, and I was thinking back to 2008 and the enthusiasm that you talked about among the students as President Barack Obama, then Senator Obama, was running for office. And Democrats are talking about these primaries, including some big ones tomorrow, and talking about the energy the Democrats are feeling. Give us a sense of what you hear and see among your students about political engagement these days. Is it up, down? Where is it right now?
Well, I guess I would answer that in two ways. First, I'll answer it in terms of Donald Trump and his administration. The other day in our class, we were talking about what it would take for the American public to really come out against Donald Trump and really push for perhaps impeachment. And the sounding in the room was it would be almost impossible to have anything come out that's going to show that Donald Trump should be impeached, except possibly the topic that came up was if Cohen, in his bagman fixer role, was taking money and it actually went directly into the pocket of Donald Trump. But beyond that, the class was hard-pressed to think that with the polarization in the public, that's really going to be, we're really going to face a situation where the public and, as a result, Congress is really going to come out against the president. But going back to your broader question, I think that young people today are very engaged. We're seeing a lot of the Parklands of the world, the Santa Fe School of the world, rising up and saying, look, this is just not acceptable, all the gun violence. We're seeing the Me Too movement, which is, while driven by all ages, is particularly an important issue to young people. And I think what we're really talking about is what happens in terms of these primary elections, in terms not only of partisanship, but also in terms of turnout. In off-year elections, young people, people of color, tend to be also a group that do not show up as much. And with the political machinations that are taking place, getting candidates elected in these primaries today to run in the general election is going to have a significant impact on what happens in the fall. And what happens in the fall is largely going to be tied to whether the Democrats are able to take back the House and potentially even take back the Senate.
And what really, in some ways, is, I don't know, it's a bit disappointing in a way, is to Democrats and Republicans, it seem alike, believe now, whether it's young or old, that the only way to get anything done is to have a majority in both houses and your party in the White House. In other words, the only way that things can happen is to have the equivalent of a parliament. And I don't know that that is unique, if that's the way things have always been, but it seems that that is the sentiment nowadays.
Well, you raise a couple of very interesting points there. Number one, in some ways, I'm actually an advocate for parliamentary type systems, because then the system doesn't suffer from gridlock, and if you don't like what the government's doing, or if there's a vote of no confidence, the rascals are thrown out and a new, more responsive government is put into its place. But your point also about working across the aisle is something that's really been damaged over the last 25 years. Years ago, we used to have Democrats and Republicans working in a more bipartisan nature. We had a number of moderates in both the Democratic and the Republican Party working to sort of bridge those gaps. And what we found over the last 20 or so years is that the ideological extremes, the most liberal of liberals and the most conservative of conservatives are the ones that are in Congress today. And as a result, they really can't work together. And as a result, we really are suffering from a lack of bipartisanship. The other point that I would make is that when we talk about the House and the Senate perhaps going Democratic, what we have to recognize is that we still have the procedure in the Senate, the filibuster, which means that the minority party, unless the majority has 60 votes or more, can hold things up, which is a break against moving forward with legislation. And for those who have optimistic views about impeachment, we only need 50% plus one vote to impeach the president, but you need a two-thirds majority to convict the president of impeachment. It's extremely unlikely, in fact, almost impossible to consider the fact that the Senate is going to impeach the president with a two-thirds vote. Although there is some recent analysis that shows that essentially the president is only 6 votes away from impeachment. If you think about the fact that if the House turns Democratic, they may file the impeachment charges. You have 48 Democrats right now in Congress who would likely, in the Senate, who might vote for impeachment. And then you have basically 12 senators who have already come out and sort of are not real happy with the president. So we only have 6 more that are needed to get up to that two-thirds majority. So it's an interesting dance that's getting played, and we'll have to see how the music ends.
Did Democrats win by pushing for impeachment in these upcoming midterm elections, or is that a loser?
I think it's a loser. I think if you've noticed that the leadership in both the House and the Senate and the Democratic side is not even bringing up the word impeachment. It's more of the left within the Democratic Party that's pushing it, as well as people coming from very, very safe districts. I think that the Democrats want to be careful that they don't look like they're the party of impeachment, but rather the party of progress. And if they are elected to office, then they're going to work probably towards impeachment, but I don't think they want to totally show their hand at this point.
All right. Dr. William Rosenberg. Bill, thanks as always. I appreciate you being here.
Have a great day.
You too. Dr. William Rosenberg is a professor of political science at Drexel University. As I mentioned, he's been on with us time to time since 2008. We started talking about this stuff. It's great to have him back. As we do so often to talk about the issues of the day, he is tweeting at Dr. B. Rosenberg, Rosenberg.